I'm here with Steve Hunt from Media Hunt. Mate, usually you're the one doing the interviews with the Media Hunt report, so I appreciate you taking the time to kind of flip the script and be interviewed yourself.
Oh, Mike, it's a privilege to be talking to you, and we really appreciate what Urban's delivering for the property community around Australia.
So there's a whole bunch of noise happening in the media in terms of what's going on with builders, developers and so forth here in Queensland. You know, what are you talking to your clients about right now? And how do you think developers and project marketers should be thinking about the way that they interface with the media?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And, you know, there's quite a few different answers to that. The media landscape has changed a lot, so I'll get to that later. But let's talk about the market. The market has definitely gone through what I'm calling a crunch. When I say a crunch, I'm talking about off the plan market. You know, after COVID, this place went absolutely ridiculous. There were so many developers, first-time developers, amalgamating sites, selling their projects out very, very quickly. So for 2 years, we had incredible growth. We had 15,000 people a year coming to the Gold Coast, and that hasn't changed. It's still happening. What we now have is, because of construction costs, rising construction costs, you've got projects that are no longer feasible. We've got a rental crisis in the city, and we've got not enough accommodation to accommodate people that are coming here.
And I guess the thing is for Queensland, you know, not only do we have this huge influx of people coming into Australia, but you've also got people from Melbourne and Sydney kind of coming to Queensland. We actually had a month last year where there were more people looking at Queensland property from New South Wales than here in Queensland. And I think it kind of goes to show, after going through the COVID experience, that, you know, people wanted to be near the sunshine and near the beach. So you've kind of got this dual impact where you've got not only, you know, that international market, but you've also got the local domestic market wanting to come and enjoy the sunshine here.
Certainly. And I think from a mental point of view, the best thing that's happened to the Gold Coast in the last 20 years was COVID. I think it fast-tracked people's retirement plans, their lifestyle aspirations. A lot of young people, in fact, on the Gold Coast, most people assume that it's retirees that come here to live here. They do, but the biggest cohort are in their 20s and 30s. You know, they're opening up coffee shops, restaurants, and that type of thing. There's a lot of tradespeople here now. We can't get enough trades. You go and try and get a builder or a sparky to come to your house, and you're going to be waiting weeks.
When something bad happens for a developer and a story gets picked up by the media, it feels from just the outside looking in with the traditional media is that stories seem to get away from developers, and often, you know, the way that they communicate can be quite different from, you know, some are kind of proactive, some are less proactive. What do you advise your clients, and how do you think they should, you know, think about these types of challenges?
I've been on the coast for 35 years. So I've been through 3 cycles, possibly more. You know, we went through the GFC. They were a whole different set of circumstances. 91 was the recession we had to have, where interest rates were at 17%. They're only just over 4% at the moment. So you've got to put things in perspective. So having that experience of those cycles, we are able to, you know, give good advice to clients. Like at the moment, I don't really see that this crunch that we're having in the off-the-plan space lasting for too long. We've really just got to get inflation down, and as you know, it's starting to drop. So I think within, you know, 6 months to 12 months, this place is going to go stupid again. We've got not enough housing, not enough apartments, and everyone will tell you that. It's commonly known within government, local government, state government. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of solutions, which we can get to. You know, so the fundamentals are amazing, and they always have been for the Gold Coast. The difference this time though is that, say back in the GFC, a lot of people moved up from Sydney, moved up from Melbourne, and then they retracted back to Sydney and Melbourne when things got a bit tough up here. But I think that the cycles have changed. We've matured as a city. Businesses are seeing the opportunities for the future. We've got the Olympics here in 9 years, 2032, the infrastructure spending by the federal, state government, the council, is enormous. While things are tough at the moment, it's definitely tough for people that are, you know, have a $500,000 mortgage or a $700,000 mortgage. I mean, the interest rates have gone up from, you know, 2% to 7% in some cases. But I don't think that's going to last very long. And I think people are very confident in the future, even though those challenges are facing us at the moment. And that applies to developers. The developers know that there's not enough housing. There's not enough land being released. Look at Bob L. You know, Bob L's got 3 of the biggest land holdings in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales, probably going to accommodate up to 50 or 60,000 people. Certain restrictions are preventing him from launching his projects. It's ridiculous. So we need to cut the red tape at state government level, and we need to understand the problems that are going to occur in 5 years' time. We don't want San Francisco. There are a lot of people out there at the moment that don't have places to live. There are people doing 40-hour work weeks. They're living in their cars. You just need to go down to Burleigh or Palm Beach or up to Southport, Northern Gold Coast, and you will find those people. There's tents, people living in tents down at Duranbar on the New South Wales border. So those people are working. They're not there during the day. The problem is real.
The government needs to kind of be, proactive and be accountable for this stuff, because I think it's difficult for the local councils when often they get voted in based on a not in my backyard type policy where they don't want the development, and the state government doesn't really have the same degree of control in many cases on approving these projects. This is the case in Victoria anyway. And so what we're hoping to see is a change where more of the project approval process can be migrated towards the state government, where they've got alignment from a tax generation, stamp duty, revenue creation process. Whereas it feels like to me, the local government's basically caught between a rock and a hard place between pleasing their constituents, which is around not approving projects, but also we have a responsibility to society to make sure that we've got enough houses for people to live in and we don't have people in tents like we have up the road.
The San Francisco example is probably a bit dramatic, but if we don't address it, it's quite conceivable we could get to that point. We're already seeing it. Like I say, the fundamentals are very good, but we need vision. And the problem with governments is they're thinking about 4-year terms. Think about councillors, they're thinking about the current term. We should be thinking like Bruce Small, who in the late 50s and 60s pretty much created the Gold Coast. He came up with the concept of the canals, and then the canals were created, and look what we have today. We've got more canals than Florida. So we need people with vision, and I'm probably sticking my neck out here, but I think we're lacking that at a state and local level.
So not many people actually know this, but you were in a former life a journalist yourself. And so I suppose you've probably got a pretty unique understanding as things kind of get away from developers or stories can be progressing. When you get that phone call from a developer in that scenario, what do you say to them?
Well, you hit them between the eyes, really. I mean, if there's a crisis, you've really got to anticipate what the media is going to write or how they're going to convey this issue. So you've got to be very open and honest about what they can expect in terms of an outcome. And quite often that's a negative outcome. We've had builders that have gone under on the Gold Coast. Condev went under and they engaged us to help manage that issue. And one of our pieces of advice, I was a journalist for nearly 20 years, Mike, and I'm able to anticipate how it's going to look in tomorrow's paper or how it's going to look on TV tonight. So I always think with the end in mind. My team thinks with the end in mind. We go, how's it going to look? Then we work backwards and we go, we engage with the media. We talk to the media. We're never going to say to them, don't write this, because they'll do whatever they want. But we've got a seat at the table where we can present a case for why a story can be crafted a certain way. Condev's a great example. They came to us and said, help. We knew they were going under. There was nothing that they could do. And I said, well, look, you've really got to come out and speak to the media. Everyone sits there and goes, we don't want to make a comment. I've got people at the moment that have got some issues and they can say no comment. Well, if you walk out of a courtroom and you say no comment to the media, it implies guilt. So I'm very, very firm in my view that you should engage with the media, build relationships with the media, even if you don't want to. Get to know people. We wear two hats. I wear two hats. Obviously, I'm paid by clients to give the right advice, but I'm also understanding of what the media requires in terms of content and information. Yeah. And it's trying to find that middle ground where your client will understand and trust that process. They're never going to get it their own way, but we are trying to manage the media, what they need in terms of content. The public's interested in what's going on in the marketplace, so give them that content without damaging a brand or a reputation of an individual in the industry.
Are there any circumstances where you would tell one of your clients to not speak with the media, or is it pretty much always better to kind of get out and get in front of it?
It's a good question. I think the best thing to do is remember that you can talk to the media off the record.
Yeah, often I've seen it or heard about people, being able to talk to journalists and say, this is off the record. Is that a reality? Do they actually honour that, or how does that process work?
Look, in 35 years in the media, I've never had a situation where I've given information or my client's given information to the media and it's been reported when it was off the record.
Right.
So it's very important. There is a code of ethics within journalism, believe it or not, and journalists do take their job seriously. Clients might not see that because they might see a story being negative about the industry or, this builder going under. But what they are doing is they're reporting facts. They're getting information that is on public record. You can't stop them writing that. I've had a client recently say, I don't want to say anything. And I go, well, if you're not going to say anything, all you're going to get reported is what someone's saying that is bad or negative about your company. At least by putting your position across, you're balancing the argument. I would always advise my clients to make a comment, even if it's 1 or 2 sentences, because the reader, the viewer, will then go, okay, well, that's a reasonable argument. If it's a reasonable response, you're balancing the argument. If you say no comment, you're just going to go, well, these guys look pretty guilty because all of the information there does not support, what they're doing.
So we've spoken a bit about crisis management, but what about the other side, which is really around getting on the front foot when things are going well and helping support a project launch be really successful? And how's that changed, and what role does kind of social media play as far as that traditional versus social?
Yeah, so the whole media landscape's changed, Mike, dramatically in the last 30 years. Gold Coast Bulletin back in the day probably had 70 journalists, whether they were sub-editors, photographers, cameramen, people going out hunting stories and so on and so forth. That's changed. There's probably 10 to 20 in an organisation like that. That spreads them a bit thin. So if you're a trusted source, which we are, we've got the relationships with media nationally. We've got good relationship with you, with Urban. We've got good relationships with everyone because the content we provide is what they're after. So we always think with the end in mind. What does the Gold Coast Bulletin want in relation to this crisis issue? We know what they want, so let's give it to them. Let's not sugarcoat it. What's real is real. However, on the positive front, when we are launching projects, we're giving them news, and it's a property town. South East Queensland's a property region.
I think we're a property country.
We're a property country. And so we're providing content. So we're a conduit between our clients and the public. And the media want those stories.
I guess the thing is like between the people that work on the project, the people that are going to live there, the people that live in the local community, major developments affect thousands or tens of thousands of people, both directly and indirectly. So it is news, right?
Yeah. And I think also social media, you mentioned before, is also creating challenges. We've got major challenges with growth. We've got light rail that have started construction on the third stage of light rail, which has been very controversial. So the third stage goes from Mermaid Beach to Burleigh. At this stage, it'll go to Coolangatta Airport. But I live in Palm Beach, and there's not a lot of people in Palm Beach that want it. And there's a lot of misinformation going out there. Traditional media, I go back to the Gold Coast Bulletin because we're talking about the Gold Coast. It's very important to talk to them about what's appearing in social media, what we're getting in terms of data, what our clients have got in terms of data that either support light rail or don't support it. So we've just got to present our case on behalf of our clients to the traditional media outlets and try and get the truth out there as much as possible. When I started as a journalist, there was he said, she said. Quite often now journalism's changed where it's just she said or just he said. They're not balancing the argument and there's too much opinion. It should really be balanced, and that's what good journalism is. And there are good journalists out there that do provide the balance.
It feels like a lot of the media cycle is optimized around clicks and driving traffic and doing those kind of things that, drive revenue for social media platforms and media organizations. And often the most controversial or the most kind of impassioned person has their voice heard. But, we were talking before about the people that are living in the tents up the road. It's like ultimately, if we don't have more houses getting built, there are going to be more people that are not going to have a place to live, and making sure that those voices are heard in the same way that they are with the Not in My Backyard crew.
Totally. And I see the Gold Coast at the moment in South East Queensland, you've got the fundamentals are really good. You've still got people selling in Sydney. They might sell their home for 5 or 6 mil and they'll buy an apartment on the beach or near the beach for 2 or 3 million. There's their retirement fund. And then you've got people who are struggling with interest rates. So there's definitely challenges. There's still developers that are selling projects and selling top-end product on the southern Gold Coast at the moment. And you wouldn't know it, but it's amazing the demand. And I spoke to a guy yesterday who's done 60 million in sales in May and June. And that's with 5 or 10% deposits on off-the-plan projects. So a lot of people think off-the-plan's dead, but things are still selling. If it's good product, it will sell. There's still demand. There's still 15,000 people coming. We've got to put them somewhere. And if people are selling in Sydney for 5, buying something for 3, they're pocketing 2, why wouldn't they come to the Gold Coast?
Well, mate, on that note, I appreciate your time, Steve. Good to catch up, my friend, and we always enjoy working with the Media Hunt crew.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.